You'll be surprised by the way America kicks off its end-of-year harvest season. Behind the nation's agriculture and seafood industries, worth over $543 billion annually, is a massive harvest system that blends cutting-edge technology, human labour, and natural resources. It's also one of the largest harvest seasons in the world. Watch until the end to see how Americans harvest in 2025. Kicking off this journey are the crops harvested almost entirely by machines, where speed, scale, and precision take centre stage. First up is the pumpkin. In the US, most pumpkins are harvested by machines to speed up the process and cut down on labour. Each year, the top pumpkin growing states bring in over £1.2 billion of pumpkins. Out in the wide fields, harvesting machines move in long, organised rows. First, a window rower lines up the pumpkins into neat rows. Right behind it, a specialised picker lifts each pumpkin onto a conveyor belt and transfers them directly onto trucks headed for processing. Thanks to this system, farmers can harvest dozens, even hundreds of acres a day without worrying about the weather ruining the crop. The state of Illinois is the pumpkin processing capital of the US. In 2024 alone, it harvested around £485 million, accounting for the majority of the nation's total production. Next up is cotton, a crop that's harvested almost entirely by machines in the US. When harvest season arrives, the vast white fields are sprayed with defoliants to remove the leaves and expose the cotton. Then, cotton pickers or cotton strippers move down the rows to begin the harvest. Cotton pickers use rotating spindles with small barbs to pull the cotton from the bolls without damaging the fibres, while cotton strippers sweep off the entire top of the plant, making them ideal in drier regions. The harvested cotton is compressed into large blocks called modules, each weighing up to 20,000 pounds. Specialised trucks with hydraulic lifts then load these modules and haul them straight to the ginning facilities, where the seeds are separated and the fibres are processed. The US is one of the world's largest producers and exporters of cotton, harvesting over 5.7 billion pounds each year, mostly from Texas, Georgia, Mississippi, Arkansas, and North Carolina. It accounts for roughly 1/3 of global cotton exports. Most of the processed cotton is sold to textile mills both domestically and abroad, supplying the apparel industry, home goods production, and international exports. The US is also the world's largest producer of almonds, harvesting nearly 2.5 billion pounds each year, with the vast majority coming from California. During harvest season, tree shakers move through the orchards, clamp onto the trunks, and shake the trees vigorously for a few seconds, causing all the almonds to fall to the ground. They're then left to dry naturally on the orchard floor for several days to reduce moisture. After that, sweepers and pickup machines neatly gather the almonds into rows before vacuuming them up into trucks. Thanks to this system, thousands of trees can be harvested each day with minimal labour. The entire process, from shaking and drying to sweeping and collecting, usually takes just a few weeks, allowing farmers to bring in massive almond yields efficiently and consistently. Peanuts are one of the most fully mechanised crops in the US, with an annual production of around 5.9 billion pounds, mainly concentrated in southeastern states like Georgia, Alabama, and Florida. When harvest season begins, farmers use diggers to pull the entire peanut plants out of the ground, flip them upside down and line them up in windrows to dry naturally for 2 to 3 days. This process helps reduce the moisture content of the peanuts, preserving their quality before storage. Once the peanuts have dried sufficiently, farmers use specialised combine harvesters to collect them. The machines move along the inverted rows, separating the peanuts from the plants while blowing away any remaining soil, roots and debris. The clean peanuts are then transferred into the machine's holding tank and unloaded onto the waiting trucks at the edge of the field. And it doesn't stop at production. Around 60 to 70% of US peanuts are consumed domestically, processed into peanut butter, candy, and many other food products. The rest is exported to international markets, including Canada, Mexico, Europe, and parts of Asia. The next leg of the harvest journey takes us to crops where manual labour plays the main role in nearly every step. First up are Christmas trees, a holiday staple in the US. Unlike pumpkins, the harvest process for Christmas trees still relies mostly on manual labour. When the time comes, workers use hand saws or chainsaws to cut each tree at its base. Right after being cut, the trees are tightly wrapped with specialised twine to keep their shape and prevent branches from breaking during transport. Next, the bundled trees are lined up in rows, waiting for tractors or forklifts to transport them to central collection areas for distribution and sale. On average, the US sells around 25 to 30 million real Christmas trees each year, primarily grown in states like Oregon, North Carolina, and Washington. On large farms, the harvest happens quickly, sometimes within just a few weeks. Hundreds of thousands of trees are cut, bundled, and shipped across the country to meet the Christmas season demand. Garlic, on the other hand, is harvested rather differently. In many garlic growing states, like California, much of the work still relies on migrant labour, as the harvest process requires skill and careful handling. When harvest season arrives, machines are used to dig and loosen the soil around the roots, making it easier to pull the plants out. Then workers hand pull each garlic plant, shake off the dirt, trim the leaves, and either bundle the plants or leave the bulbs loose. After this step, the garlic is sent to processing areas for further handling and storage. Each year, California farmers harvest around 400 million pounds of garlic, accounting for over 90% of the US commercial supply. The Gilroy region is known as the garlic capital of the world, home to many large farms such as the Christopher Ranch. Christopher Ranch alone harvests nearly 105 million pounds of garlic annually. This is about a quarter of California's total production, supplying both domestic and international markets. After exploring harvests driven by machines and human labour, our journey now takes us to the iconic seasonal harvests that are deeply tied to the different regions across the US. Cranberries are one of the most uniquely harvested fruits in the US. Most of the production comes from the northern states like Wisconsin, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Oregon, with the harvest season typically running from September through November each year. Instead of picking the berries by hand, farmers flood the entire cranberry bog to harvest them. Once the water is pumped in, water reels, often called egg beaters, stir the water, knocking the ripe berries off the vines. Thanks to their natural air pockets, the berries float to the surface. Workers then use floating booms to corral them into large clusters, where pumps or conveyor belts lift them onto trucks. Each year, the US harvests around 760 million pounds of cranberries, most of which are processed into juice, sauces, and export products. The sight of flooded bright red fields during harvest season has become an iconic image of Northern American agriculture. Next up is sugarcane, grown mainly in warm climates like Florida, Louisiana, and Texas. The harvest season typically runs from late fall through to early spring, when the stalks have reached their peak sweetness. The harvesting process in the US is almost fully mechanized. Before the machines enter the fields, farmers do a light burn to remove the dry leaves and excess debris, allowing the equipment to work more efficiently. Then, modern sugarcane harvesters move through the fields, cutting the stalks close to the ground and chopping them into short segments before loading them onto trucks via conveyor belts. Florida is currently the largest sugarcane producing state in the US, harvesting over 34 billion pounds of sugarcane each year, and supplying most of the raw material for the domestic sugar industry. Thanks to mechanization, the harvest runs quickly and continuously, day and night, allowing farmers to process thousands of acres within just a few peak weeks. Wrapping up our journey through fields and farms, we now head out to the oceans, rivers and wetlands to see how Americans harvest millions of pounds of seafood. Kicking off the US seafood season, we have salmon, one of the country's most remarkable harvests. Unlike many other seafood products, most of the supply doesn't come from industrial farming, but from wild catches. The harvest season typically starts in late spring and runs through early fall, with the biggest activity centered in Alaska, which accounts for over 90% of the nation's wild salmon production. When the salmon return from the ocean to the rivers to spawn, thousands of fishermen head out in small boats. They use various methods, with purse seining and gill netting being the most common. Once the fish are hauled aboard, they're chilled immediately to preserve their freshness and then are quickly transported back to port for sorting and processing. In Alaska alone, 230 million salmon are harvested each year, yielding over 460 million pounds of fish for both domestic consumption and export. For the people here, this isn't just a harvest season. It's a deeply rooted part of the traditional fishing culture. While salmon is tied to the open ocean and cold rivers, oysters are a true symbol of America's coastal regions. From the Gulf Coast to the Pacific Northwest in the East Coast, oysters are farmed and harvested in a controlled manner, blending traditional techniques with modern machinery. When the tide goes out, fishermen head to the oyster beds to begin the harvest. At traditional farms, they use metal rakes or their hands to detach the oysters from the seabed and load them onto boats. Meanwhile, modern operations use hoists or automated basket systems to lift entire cages out of the water, saving both time and labour. After being harvested, the oysters are washed right there on the boat, sorted by size, and sent to packing facilities the same day in order to maintain peak freshness. Each year, the US harvests around 20.9 million pounds of oyster meat, most of which is exported to countries around the globe, while also supplying domestic restaurants and markets. Next, we head to Louisiana, where crawfish has become an essential part of both local agriculture and culinary culture. This state produces around 90% of the nation's crawfish supply. The crawfish harvest season runs from November through June, peaking in the spring. During harvest, fishermen typically use small, flat-bottomed boats equipped with rear-mounted motors to navigate quickly through the flooded fields. They set out dense rows of cylindrical wire mesh traps, baited with pieces of fish to attract the crawfish. After a few hours or overnight, the traps are hauled up by hand or with small winches, and the crawfish are dumped into bins and the traps are reset. Louisiana produces over 100 million pounds of crawfish each year, most of which is consumed domestically through food festivals and restaurant chains. Looking across the harvest stretching all over the US, you can clearly see the diversity and scale of the country's agriculture and seafood industries. Behind every harvest are the diligent efforts of millions of farmers and fishermen. The end of the year is always the busiest time for farmers. After a year of diligent care, lush green vegetable fields and fruit-laden orchards are ready for harvest. In this video, let's follow the urgent, rhythmic and determined journey of farmers in the late 2025 harvest season. Strawberries are one of the most popular fruits worldwide. Currently, the US ranks second globally in the production of this fruit, with over 1.2 million tons each year. When the harvest season arrives, most strawberries are still picked by hand. Farmers bend over, moving slowly between rows, skillfully picking each ripe plump strawberry. Each fruit, once detached from its stem, is gently placed into a small plastic container attached to a trolley to avoid bruising. These strawberry containers are then neatly packed into crates right in the field, ready for same-day distribution. Unlike strawberries, Brussels sprouts are a crop that requires a combination of machinery and human effort during harvesting. Farmers sit on machines, their hands swiftly pulling each Brussels sprout plant from the ground, keeping the long stem where the small sprouts grow closely together. Each plant is then fed directly into a cutting machine with rotating blades to separate the sprouts from the stem. These sprouts then fall onto a conveyor belt running along the machine. Here workers stand by to inspect and remove any damaged or substandard sprouts. Only fresh, uniform and vibrant green sprouts are kept. Batches of these sprouts are then gathered onto lots and immediately sent to the processing plant, ready for the next stage of processing. Around 80 to 85% of the harvested produce is sent to the processing line, mainly for frozen products. Next, let's visit the lush green vineyards stretching across California, considered the capital of grape cultivation in the US. Approximately 99% of fresh-eating grapes in the US is produced right here, with a cultivated area of over 120,000 acres. In these vineyards, the harvesting work remains manual and meticulous, as it has been for generations. Farmers hold shears, gently cutting each plump bunch of grapes, swaying under the green leaves. They move quickly along the rows, their hands swift but precise, avoiding bruising the fruit with the blades. Each cut bunch is immediately placed into crates, gradually filled with the glistening green of a bountiful harvest. Whilst grapes are typically harvested by hand, apples are a fruit harvested using tree-shaking machines. First, a large tarp is spread at the height of the tree trunk or at the base, wide enough to catch all of the falling apples. When ready, the machine clamps onto the tree trunk and shakes it gently, and in around 2 seconds most of the apples on the tree fall into the tarp. This allows farmers to harvest thousands of apples in just a single day. Production of this fruit is predicted to reach 11.7 billion pounds in the US alone. Next, let's look at lush green rows of lettuce, a common vegetable in daily meals worldwide. To harvest lettuce, farmers have to bend deeply, carefully using a knife to cut each lettuce head skillfully. Each cut must be precise to maintain the leaf shape and avoid bruising or damaging the tender stem. Afterwards, the bundles of lettuce are placed onto a conveyor belt to be transferred into containers ready for the next stage. Currently, many places have adopted harvesting machines to save labour. The giant machine glides slowly across the rows, its sharp blades evenly cutting each lettuce head. After cutting, the lettuce is transferred to an upper conveyor belt for preliminary cleaning. Workers stand on both sides of the conveyor belt to observe and inspect, keeping only the standard quality plants. Another common vegetable is the cauliflower. On average, each person cuts around 3 pounds of cauliflower per year. In the field, workers use sharp knives to cut each head of cauliflower at its base. Immediately after, they quickly trim away the long surrounding leaves, revealing the pristine white florets inside. The complete cauliflower heads are then placed directly onto a conveyor belt running along the field and transferred to the packaging area. Here workers carry out quality control. Only firm, uniform white florets are immediately packaged, preserving their freshness. This ensures that the product reaches consumers is always of the best quality. The next product is pears. After a record low harvest in 2024, US pear production is expected to rebound strongly in 2025, reaching around 625,000 tonnes. For this fruit, farmers typically harvest by hand, gently twisting the stem to detach the fruit from the branch. Each pear is then carefully placed into a basket worn by the farmer, ensuring its beautiful shape and fresh quality are maintained. When the basket is full, the empty pears are collected into bins in the middle of the orchard, preparing them for sale to traders. Cassava is also a crop that requires manual harvesting. Farmers carefully dig around the base of the plant, then pull the entire cassava bush from the ground by hand. Each bush typically has between 3 and 5 tubers, varying in size, which are then separated from the stem. After that, they quickly brush off any clinging soil and gather the tubers into piles, preparing them for transport to the collection point. Nigeria is the world's leading producer of cassava, with an output of over 60 million tonnes. Next, let's follow the bamboo harvesting process in Asia. Bamboo harvesting typically takes place at the end of the rainy season and the beginning of the dry season, when the bamboo stalks have reached sufficient hardness. Workers use axes or large knives to skillfully cut each bamboo stalk close to the base. After cutting, they chop the remaining base to prevent new shoots from growing too densely, but still retain a few healthy shoots for the bamboo clump to continue to grow. Each bamboo stalk can weigh between 33 and 66 pounds, so transporting them from the forest requires strength and agility. Workers often carry them on their shoulders or backs, moving the bamboo to collection points before selling. Bamboo is used to create many items, such as cutting boards, chopsticks, baskets, or exquisite handicrafts. Our next destination is the lush orange groves. The harvesting of this fruit primarily relies on immigrant labourers. They wear a canvas basket in front of their chest, gently plucking each plump orange and dropping it into the basket. When the basket is full, the oranges are poured into large bins placed at the base of the trees. Another fruit that requires meticulous harvest is the prickly pear. The ideal time to harvest prickly pears is late summer. Farmers wear thick gloves to avoid being pricked by the sharp thorns, then use tongs or a small knife to cut the stem. With just a gentle twist and a skillful turn, a ripe prickly pear will detach itself from the pad. Immediately after being picked, the prickly pears are washed to remove any of the tiny thorns that are still clinging to their skin. Then they are processed into various products depending on their intended use. Mexico alone harvested around 444,000 tons of prickly pears in 2024. The next product is straw mushrooms. These are fast-growing and easy to cultivate mushrooms, often utilising readily available agricultural waste. Palm oil waste, cassava pulp, or fermented straw are commonly used as fertiliser and substrates. After around 4 to 6 weeks, the entire growth cycle of straw mushrooms is complete. At this point, farmers carefully use small knives to cut the mushrooms close to the base, level with the substrate. This task requires skill, as even a slightly rough movement can bruise the mushrooms or affect the surrounding plants. Each cut mushroom is then collected, ready for sorting and distribution. Next, we'll look at how farmers use tree shaking machines to harvest plums. The machine's arm extends, clamps tightly onto the tree trunk, and then shakes it vigorously for a few seconds. In just a short time, all of the ripe plums fall. Below, large tarps are already open to catch the fruit. From the tarps, the fruit quickly slides onto a waiting conveyor belt system. At the end of the conveyor, workers continuously remove any remaining leaves and dirt. Only quality fruit is transferred to the large bins. Thanks to machines like these, farmers can harvest up to 390,000 tons of plums each year. The next location on our journey is the sugar beet fields. This vegetable is typically harvested by machine. At the front of the machine, rotating blades quickly cut off the green tops of the beet plants. Immediately after, specialised components gently burrow into the soil, lifting each sugar beet from the ground. As the beets are lifted, they are transferred directly onto a conveyor belt attached to the machine. The conveyor belt carries the beets upwards and deposits them directly into the large collection bins running parallel to it. Sugar beet production in the US for the 2025-26 crop is projected to reach a high of around 35 million tonnes, thanks to excellent yields. Another agricultural product often harvested by machine is silage corn. At the front of the harvesting machine, a specialised component cuts and feeds the corn plants inwards. Once inside, a chopping system quickly grinds the entire plant into small pieces. These small pieces are then powerfully blown through a chute, directly straight into a truck running parallel alongside. When the truck is full, workers drive it to the storage facility. Thanks to this coordinated effort, one machine can harvest up to 1,500 acres of silage corn in just 6 days. Finally, let's look at how pine wood is harvested. In the forest, workers drive felling machines. Just a few seconds are enough to fell a pine tree dozens of feet tall. Once felled, the tree trunk is cut into smaller sections, and then the branches and leaves are also separated for easier transport and processing. All of these logs are neatly gathered at a storage area in the middle of the forest. Next, another machine moves in, using large grappling arms to pick up each log and neatly stack them into trucks. These trucks continuously transport the wood out of the forest for various purposes, such as fuel, paper production, plywood, and many more. When the fruit baskets are full and the transport vehicles leave the fields and orchards, that's when the farmers can relax and smile, reflecting on a year of hard work. Today's video ends here. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and see you in the next video.